It was not long before the graveled space was alive with graceful female figures, most of them dressed in light muslin or gauze, floating to and fro like white summer clouds. The dark, stiff walls of yew offered an excellent background for these airy, gliding shapes. Silver-bright laughter and animated talk rippled through the mild air, now and then crossed by one of the deeper male voices. The invited circle was soon complete. They gathered around the coffee table, and work baskets appeared on many a lap. At a sign from Mrs. Hellwig, Felicitas crossed the gravel with the tray. "My rule is simple and inexpensive," the counselor's widow was saying cheerfully as Felicitas approached. "In summer, I never wear a material that costs me more than 3 thalers. "You forget my dear counselor's widow," replied another very ornamented young lady, whose malicious glance traveled over the vaunted simple gown, "that on this cheap material you carry a whole host of embroidered and lace-trimmed insertions that at least triple its cost." "Bah! Who would reckon such fragrance in prosaic coin?" cried young Frank, amused by the hostile looks exchanged between the two. "One might think such perfume must bear the ladies straight to heaven, were it not that certain heavy golden bracelets, for example, must surely drag them back to earth again." His eyes rested with evident interest on the wrist of the counselor's widow. As if against his will, he looked away again, while a deep flush rose to her cheeks and brow. "Do you know, madame," he said, "this bracelet has occupied my thoughts for the last half-hour. It is splendid, very ancient workmanship. What especially excites my curiosity is the inscription in the midst of the wreath." Her blush had already faded. Her soft eyes met his quietly as she unfastened the clasp and handed him the ornament with perfect composure. Felicitas stood just behind the lawyer and easily saw the jewel in his hand. Strange! Down to the smallest detail, it was the very twin of the bracelet hidden in the secret compartment of the old Mamsell's cabinet, that mysterious relic of her solitary life. Only here the circle was narrower, fitted closely to the young widow's wrist. "Das ihr liebest Anne Krank. Die hat Gott zusammengegeben auf ein wunderliches Leben," Frank read fluently. "Curious," he exclaimed. "The stanza has no beginning. Ah, of course! It is from Ulrich von Liechtenstein's Städte Liebe. The full stanza runs, roughly translated, "When two hearts do truly love, faithful with unswerving mind, and in union ever prove love renewed, more closely twined, God himself hath joined that pair, blending them in joy to share." "This bracelet has beyond doubt a companion," he went on, animated, "to which it is bound by the missing beginning of the verse. Is the twin piece not in your possession?" "No," replied the counselor's widow, bending again over her work while the ornament passed from hand to hand. "And how did you come by such a remarkable piece, Adele?" the professor asked across the table. A faint color rose to her cheeks. "Papa gave it to me recently," she said lightly. "Heaven knows from what antiquarian he unearthed it." She took the bracelet back, clasped it on her arm again, and addressed a question to one of the ladies, letting the conversation drift elsewhere. While everyone's attention had been fixed on the bracelet, Felicitas had finished serving the coffee. Cups were filled and taken almost without noticing the hand that served them. Quietly, she slipped back into the garden house. At Anna's entreaty, who was playing on the shaded path, she paused, threw her upper body lightly backward, raised both arms, and caught the low, hanging branches of the acacia to break off a twig for the child. It was a posture that showed the perfection of the young girl's figure. The lawyer suddenly raised his lorgnette. He was somewhat short-sighted. His dark eyes rested with evident surprise on the youthful form beneath the tree, and he was sharply observed by the counselor's widow, who seemed wholly absorbed in her embroidery. When Felicitas disappeared into the house, he let the glass drop. A question hovered on his lips, no doubt meant for Mrs. Hellwig, but the young widow cut him off at once, diverting him with an artful question about an accident he had once witnessed while traveling. A little later, she rose noiselessly and stepped into the garden house. "Dear Caroline," she said in the little kitchen, "it is not necessary for you to serve out there. Ah, a coffee warmer. That is quite good. Fill the pot with fresh coffee. I will pour for the guests myself. It is much cozier so. And, to be frank, you look wretched in that washed-out calico. How can you appear before men in that short, hideous skirt? Positively indecent. Can you not feel that yourself, child?" The despised skirt was Felicitas's best dress, her Sunday dress. Faded and too short, yes, but spotless and neatly ironed. That even this humble garment should be used to wound her made her lips curl, but she said nothing. Any defense would have been useless and absurd. When the counselor's widow returned to the table, the very conversation she had hoped to prevent was already underway. "Strikingly beautiful," repeated Mrs. Hellwig with a harsh laugh. "Fie, my dear Frank. What am I to think of you?" "Striking. Yes, in the way a girl ought not to be. That pale face with its dissolute hair, those defiant airs and wanton movements, those eyes that stare boldly into decent people's faces, that is the legacy of a wretched, disorderly mother. Breed never alters. What is born behind the hedge will never be respectable. I know it from experience. For 9 long years I have spared no pains to win a soul for the Lord, and this obstinate creature has made mockery of it all." "Ah, dear aunt, it will soon be over," soothed the counselor's widow. "A few weeks more, and the troublesome intruder will leave your house forever. The seed has fallen on stony ground. We who have the happiness to spring from decent parents should not judge her too harshly. The lightness is in her blood. When you travel next year, Mr. Frank," she added lightly, "you may find my aunt's former inmate gracing some tight-rope or circus ring." "She does not look the part," the professor said suddenly in his calmly decisive tone. He had been silent until now. His quiet contradiction, so unmistakably disapproving, could not fail to be noticed. Mrs. Hellwig turned on him sharply. For a heartbeat, the widow's eyes lost their habitual softness. She had just drawn breath to speak when a scream cut the air. Little Anna was running toward them, clutching a box of matches, her frock in flames. The young widow screamed and, glancing at her own light, highly flammable garments, recoiled instinctively and sprang behind the yew wall. The perfumed ladies scattered like startled doves. Only Mrs. Hellwig rushed forward, and both gentlemen hurried after her, but it was too late. Felicitas was already there. She flung her own dress around the burning child, pressing tightly to smother the flames. They leapt too high. Her thin cotton dress caught. Fire streamed up around her, but without hesitation she clasped the child more firmly, ran across the lawn, up the green slope, and plunged into the rushing millstream. Life and death were compressed into a few seconds. Before the men fully grasped her intent, the flames were quenched. They reached the bank as Felicitas rose again, the dripping child on her right arm, steadying herself with the left on a hazel branch. The young widow appeared on the dam above them. "My child! Save my Anna!" she cried in despair, as if to fling herself into the water. "Mind your shoes, Adele. You may catch cold," said the professor with biting irony as he scrambled down. He stretched out his hands, but let them fall again. The face that had been so perfectly composed a moment ago darkened. A furrow carved itself between his brows as her deadly cold, hostile gaze struck him once more. She turned away, passed the child into his arms, then, with a faint, grateful smile, grasped the lawyer's hand and sprang up the bank. The professor carried the child into the garden house and examined her. Miraculously, she was hardly hurt. Only the left hand showed burns. The little one confessed, sobbing, how she had lit the match. The scattered ladies reappeared timidly. Lamentations and congratulations poured on the mother. The poor angel was smothered in caresses. "But dear Caroline," said the widow gently, reproachful, "could you not have kept a little watch over Anna?" "You forbade me a few minutes ago to leave the house," Felicitas answered, flushing darkly as she fixed her with a keen, unflinching look. "Indeed? And why was that, Adele?" asked Mrs. Hellwig. "You have only to look at that hair," the widow replied sweetly. "I wish to spare her, and us, the unpleasant impression untidiness always makes." Startled, Felicitas raised her hand. The comb had slipped away, no doubt lying now at the bottom of the stream. Her loosened hair fell in a shining mass around her shoulders, sprinkled with bright drops of water. "Is that all your gratitude to the hand that carried your child through fire and water?" asked the lawyer sharply. "How can you think so ill of me?" protested the young widow. "A mother's heart in the first moment." She turned to Felicitas warmly. "I shall never forget this day. Take this for the present." She unclasped the bracelet. "It is precious to me, but gladly would I sacrifice all for my Anna." Felicitas drew back, deeply hurt. "I thank you," she said, lifting her head, "but I will never be paid for what Christian charity demands. Least of all will I accept what you call a sacrifice. You say I have merely atoned for an oversight. Then you owe me nothing." Mrs. Hellwig seized the bracelet. "You have lost your senses, Adele. What should the girl do with such a thing? Give her a stout gingham dress. That will be of use." Frank turned away, fetched his hat, and called to Felicitas from the open window. "I think we are all excessively cruel to you. First you are wounded with base gold, and now we let you shiver in wet clothes. I will run into town and send what is needed for you and for our little fire raiser." He left. "He is a fool," muttered Mrs. Hellwig. The professor, absorbed in his patient, had taken no part in the argument. But anyone near him must have seen the flush that rose when the bracelet was offered. He was no lady's doctor. There was something ruthlessly inconsiderate in him toward the gentle sex. Yet even the mother's anxious questions he answered curtly, even sharply. At last he handed over the child and went toward the door. Felicitas had withdrawn into a corner, leaning against the wall, her face livid, her brows knitted with pain. The burn throbbed cruelly. As he closed the door, the professor saw her. He hesitated, then strode across the room. "You are in pain?" "It can be borne," she whispered, lips tightening. "The flame caught you?" "Yes, in the arm." "Will you refuse my help?" His tone was low, unexpectedly gentle. "I will not trouble you," she said darkly. "I can help myself in town." "As you please, but my mother still has a claim on your strength. Do not willfully make yourself ill." "I do not forget it," she said more softly. "Is there anything for you to do here, Johannes?" called the widow. "No," he said shortly. "But why are you here still, Adele?" "I told you. Fresh air for the child. Not this stifling room." He left. Heinrich soon arrived with fresh clothes. Rosa came too. Felicitas was given leave to return to town. In Aunt Cordula's attic, the old Mamsell bound the wound with cooling ointment, while Felicitas, feverish with pain and emotion, told all that had happened. Her strained self-control broke when Aunt Cordula remarked gently that she ought not to have refused medical help. "No, Aunt," she cried. "That hand shall not touch me, though it could save me from death itself. The class from which I spring is to him unspeakably repugnant. That word once wounded my childish heart to the core. I will never forget it. Duty may have forced him today to overcome his disgust for a moment, but I will have no part in such a sacrifice." Breathless, trembling, she continued, "He is not without pity. In another man, such sacrifice would move me to tears. In him it angers me, as another's vice might. I am ungenerous, Aunt, ignoble, I know it, but I cannot help it. Wrath and rebellion tear at me whenever I am expected to admire a man I shall hate to the end of my days." She spoke, too, of the young widow's heartlessness. A strange red patch flickered beneath the Mamsell's left eye. "No wonder. She's Paul Hellwig's daughter," said the old woman quietly, words that fell like a verdict. For the first time, Felicitas sensed a hidden past, but the Mamsell slipped at once back into reserve. On the table lay portfolios of musical autographs, Handel, Gluck, Haydn, Mozart. Beneath them emerged a thick music manuscript, The Wisdom of the Authorities in the Matter of Brewing Beer, by Johann Sebastian Bach. The Mamsell laid a finger on the name. "You do not know this one," she said. "It has lain hidden for many years. It belongs in the red portfolio, likely the only copy in existence, the true operatic airs Bach wrote." She turned the title page. On the reverse, score written by the hand of Johann Sebastian Bach, received from him as a keepsake in 1707. Gottel von Hirschsprung. "He is said to have sung in it," she murmured. "And how did it come to you, Aunt?" "By inheritance," she answered shortly, slipping it away. Felicitas longed to ask more, but dared not. The Mamsell lifted the piano lid. Felicitas withdrew to the glassed recess. The sun was setting. The valley shimmered. Evening peace lay over the land. Then Beethoven's funeral march drifted through the room. After a few bars, Felicitas lifted her head in alarm. That was no longer mere piano playing. It was a faint whisper of sound, fading, ghost-like, yet it struck her heart like a sudden warning. The hands gliding over the keys were weary, deadly weary, and what rose beneath them was the beating of wings, a soul striving to free itself once for all.